Okay, so imagine this. You're arrested for murder,
Oh,
but you didn't do it.
okay.
And to prove it, you give the police a list of 13 people.
13.
13 people who could say, yep, he was with us
Wow.
hundreds of miles away when this crime happened.
Yeah.
And the police just ignore it.
What?
They don't even look into it.
Oh my gosh.
That's what happened to Richard Rosario back in 1998.
That's unbelievable.
His case and the story of another man named Eric Glissonen are kind of at the heart of our deep dive today
Okay.
into this world of wrongful convictions.
It's a tough world.
Yeah, and it's not just their stories that are interesting, but what they tell us about the whole system.
Right? Like, how did this even happen?
Exactly. Like, where are the weak points?
Where are the cracks?
Where does justice kind of fall apart?
Yeah.
So we're looking at a conversation that happened between Dan Slepian,
Okay.
he's a veteran producer for Dateline,
I know Dan.
and his colleague, Josh Manowitz.
Okay.
They were at CrimeCon in New Orleans. And Slepian had just released his podcast called 13 Alibis.
Catchy title.
Yeah, it's all about Rosario's case. Now, to really get this, we need to go back to New York City in the mid-90s.
Okay. Back in time.
Yeah. So think about a city dealing with just tons of crime.
A lot of pressure.
Huge pressure.
Yeah.
Over 2,200 murders in 1990 alone. So the police are feeling it.
Yeah.
To make arrests, to get convictions.
They got to solve these cases.
Yeah, and that's the world Richard Rosario is in when he's convicted of murder.
Okay.
In the Bronx, just based on people saying they saw him.
Eyewitness testimony.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But remember, he gave the police that list.
13 people.
13 alibi witnesses who could put him in Florida
Far away.
at the time of the murder.
And nobody checked.
Nope. Neither the police nor his first lawyers even looked into it.
Oh, wow.
And then, to make matters worse, there was a miscommunication between his first and second lawyers. So this key evidence never made it into the courtroom.
So this is where we see how messed up the system can be.
Right. And it makes you think about those who can afford really good lawyers
Versus those who can't.
and have to rely on public defenders who are often overworked.
I have so many cases.
Way too many cases.
It's a huge problem.
And we got to remember, most criminal cases end in plea deals, not trials.
Right.
So that adds a whole other level of,
Oh, well, pressure.
yeah, pressure to just plead guilty even if you're innocent.
Because who wants to risk a trial?
Exactly. And then you have cases like Eric Glisson's that just show how this pressure can lead to the wrong outcome.
Wrongfully convicted.
Yeah, Glisson spent 18 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit.
18 years.
All because one person said they saw him there.
Just one eyewitness.
And it wasn't even a reliable witness.
Wow.
He and 5 others were wrongly convicted by the same NYPD precinct that handled Rosario's case.
So there's a pattern here.
It seems like, and here's the crazy part,
Yeah.
the police in Glisson's case actually had evidence that could have cleared he and the others.
She did.
They had cell phone records that linked the real killer to the crime.
And they didn't do anything with it.
They never followed up on it.
Unbelievable.
It makes you wonder how often this happens, you know?
How many other cases?
Important information just overlooked or ignored.
Yeah. Scary thought. Makes you think about what was important to them back then. Was it just closing cases or
Yeah, were they so focused on that they didn't care about the truth?
maybe they just missed it somehow.
But how do you miss cell phone records?
It's not like it was hidden.
Right. And these cases, both Rosario and Glisson's, really make you think about the police and how they act.
Especially in places where there's a lot of crime.
Yeah, where there's that pressure to get those convictions.
So much pressure.
And it's not just about blaming individual officers, but looking at the whole system.
Yeah, what kind of training are they getting?
Are there rules in place to make sure investigations are done right?
That's a big one.
And how do we make sure everyone gets a fair chance?
Whether they're rich or poor.
Exactly, because everyone deserves justice,
Absolutely. And that's where the media comes in.
like journalists.
Yeah, like in the Rosario's case, it was Dan Slepian from Dateline
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
who finally uncovered the truth.
And helped get him released.
It was a tip from another inmate that got him started.
Wow, so someone on the inside knew.
It's amazing what one person can do.
Makes you wonder how many other innocent people are just waiting for someone to listen,
Hoping for that one break.
to tell their story.
Slepian talked about that. He said it wasn't just him.
But the power of Dateline itself.
That made people pay attention.
That's the power of good journalism.
To shine a light on these injustices.
To hold people accountable.
Exactly. But it also makes you think, if it takes a big media outlet to get justice, what does that say about the system?
Yeah, is it really able to fix itself?
Big questions.
So where do we go from here? What can we do to stop this from happening again?
I think awareness is key.
Like knowing this is a problem.
Yeah, understanding how the system works and that it can make mistakes.
It's not perfect,
Not at all.
but it's not just about knowing we have to do something.
You gotta take action.
What can we actually do?
We can support organizations that fight for people who've been wrongly convicted.
Good idea.
And we can push for changes to fix those systemic issues we talked about.
Better training for police.
Stronger rules for investigations.
Making sure everyone has a good lawyer.
And we can educate ourselves.
Yeah. Learn about the legal system, how wrongful convictions happen, and how bias plays a role.
Bias is a big one.
It can be conscious or unconscious.
Yeah, it affects everything.
And we need to talk about these things.
Have real conversations, not just blame each other.
How can we work together to make things better?
To have a system that keeps us safe.
But also make sure everyone is treated fairly.
That's the goal.
It's tough, but we can't ignore it.
We can't.
And these stories, as sad as they are.
They can help us make positive changes.
Yeah, I remember Sleepian said something interesting.
What was that?
He said, wrongful convictions don't just hurt the people involved,
Right.
but they make everyone trust the justice system less.
That's a big deal.
And it costs taxpayers money to keep innocent people locked up.
It affects everyone.
So we all have a responsibility to find solutions.
And make things more just and fair.
Makes you think, are there others out there like Richard and Eric?
Yeah, you gotta wonder how many innocent people are in prison.
Because the system messed up.
Right? Sleepian actually gave a crazy statistic during their talk.
Oh, really?
He said, even if our justice system gets it right 98% of the time,
Okay.
which is probably being generous,
Probably.
that still means thousands of people
Thousands.
are locked up wrongly.
That's a lot of people.
It's a huge number, and it shows how bad these failures can be.
Yeah. We're not just talking about numbers.
We're talking about real people.
Real lives messed up by the system that was supposed to protect them.
And for every person wrongly convicted.
There's a guilty person out there free.
Yeah, maybe hurting more people.
So what's our responsibility in all this?
That's the big question. How do we make the system more fair?
How do we even start fixing something this big?
Well, I think talking about it is a good first step.
Like we're doing now.
Yeah, sharing these stories, understanding how complex the system is.
And realizing it's not perfect.
It can make mistakes. It's run by people, after all.
So it's not about getting rid of the whole system.
But seeing where it's broken and trying to fix it.
Okay, so what kind of fixes are we talking about?
We need to push for changes that address those weak points.
Like we talked about before, better police training, stricter investigations.
Making sure everyone has a good lawyer.
And we can support those organizations fighting for the wrongly convicted.
Exactly. And we need to be careful about the information we consume.
Like double check the news.
Be aware of our own biases, question what we think we know.
And look deeper than just the headlines.
It's about being good citizens, being informed.
And speaking up for change, holding our leaders accountable.
You got it. It's about making sure everyone gets a fair chance at justice.
No matter who they are.
That's what we should be aiming for.
These conversations might be hard.
But they're so important.
And stories like Richard's and Eric's,
As tough as they are,
they can really push us to do better.
they remind us that justice isn't automatic.
It's something we have to keep fighting for,
Every single day.
both as individuals.
And as a society.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for having me.
It was great having you join us for this deep dive.
I learned a lot.
And we hope you did too if you want to learn more about this case and the fight for justice.
Check out the show notes.
We've got links to all the resources we talked about, and please subscribe to the deep dive so you never miss an episode.
We're covering all kinds of fascinating stories.
And shedding light on important issues.
Join us next time for another deep dive.
Until then, stay curious and keep questioning.